Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Flick Connection, where in less time than you normally spend scrolling for something to watch every night, I'm going to tell you about 13 of the most underrated movies currently included with Max. But don't worry if you don't subscribe to Max, I've also listed some other streaming services that are currently hosting these same titles down in the top pinned comment. I've also listed where you can stream these titles in a few countries around the world, like Canada, the UK, and Australia. Thanks to Sundays for Dogs for sponsoring another video, but first I want to tell you about my lucky number 13 pick, Bleed for This.
Just hold him off, tell him I'm coming.
He's on the bicycle.
No, dummy, is wait. What weight's he at?
Where you at, Vinny?
I'm coming!
He's coming.
In this movie, Miles Teller actually plays a world championship boxer, Vinny Pazienza, who was in a near-fatal car accident, was told he'd never walk again. They put the halo on him, the whole thing, and he somehow managed to come back from that and begin boxing again. So while this is a boxing movie, it is much more about his recovery. Aaron Eckhart does a great job playing his coach. And it's a really uplifting and inspiring movie, but it just happens to also be pretty well directed, well acted, and it's just a kind of a tight flick. It's also one of those sports movies where you don't have to have any interest in the sport to thoroughly enjoy the storytelling. But again, even though this has a lot in common with boxing movies, you really are focused on this pretty horrific car accident for most of the film. My number 12 pick is a throwback, and it will appeal to fans of Alien, even though it's not quite as good. It came out on the heels of Alien, and is kind of a mix between Alien and The Abyss. I'm talking about Leviathan. This takes place in a futuristic underwater research facility and stars sci-fi legend Peter Weller. But it's actually directed by George Cosmatos, who did Rambo 2 and maybe more famously Cobra with Sylvester Stallone just before Leviathan. And like I said, this is kind of a mix of Alien and The Abyss. While I don't think it's as good as either movie, it does fit in the same wheelhouse, so if you're a fan of those things, this is a cool throwback monster flick. But I'll admit, there's not enough in Leviathan to really hook people who aren't interested in a throwback 80s monster movie that takes place in the bottom of the ocean. Now, longtime subscribers will know that I don't recommend romantic comedies here on the channel very often. I find the bulk of them, at least the big ones, to all be practically the same movie, but there are plenty that have stood out to me over the years, and I love talking about them. My next pick being one of my favorites, Hit and Run.
What are you talking about?
I was in jail for 8 months.
Oh, you didn't like the gym equipment?
I got in prison because of you. Yeah.
I'm really sorry. Was it a black guy?
No, it wasn't a black guy.
This actually stars real husband and wife, Dax Shepard and Kristen Bell, and was written and directed by Dax Shepard. And it was the first movie he directed, and Chips was probably the last. But Chips aside, Hit and Run is a really great date night movie. They play a couple in the movie. He's got kind of this big secret where he used to rob banks. Bradley Cooper is one of the bank robbers in it, and he's really great. He's playing a bizarre character, and it's a lot of fun to watch him do it. Tom Arnold is hilarious in this movie, and it's a nice, sweet romantic comedy, but it's loaded with car chases. Dax Shepard is actually a car guy, and he worked in a lot of car culture stuff into this, including a really sick custom Lincoln that they built for the movie. So this movie literally has something for everyone, and it's just a funny, fun caper that's great to watch with one other person, or really, honestly, you could watch this with a group of people, as long as none of them are young children.
Is it one of those white guys?
Charlie?
It was Filipino! Solve your dilemma of a part of the world my ass traveled to?
But we'll jump from that real light movie to the heaviest one on this list. It actually stars Christopher Plummer and was one of his last big leading roles. It's titled Remember. And he really is the showcase of the movie. There's some great supporting roles here, but he's going on a journey and encountering different people along the way. So Christopher Plummer is in every single scene, and in this movie, he's actually playing a Holocaust survivor who is going on a mission to kill a few Nazis, or at least some Nazi-adjacent folks. He has a kill list. The problem is, he's getting up there in years, and he's starting to lose grip with reality. Not just that, but the movie's titled Remember because he's having a hard time with his memory, which is not a good thing when you've got a kill list in your pocket. This does have a lower budget feel, especially for something starring him, but he does an excellent job, and the storytelling here is top notch. It just kind of has a made-for-TV vibe, but ultimately packs a real serious punch, and in terms of Nazi hunting movies, there's a handful of those now. This one might not be the best one, but it definitely stands out and it is very different from any other ones I've seen. And then my number 9 pick is appropriately titled 9. Now this is an animated action adventure movie, but it is rated PG-13 and is not suitable for very young children. It will be a little too intense for them and honestly could be nightmare-inducing for very young kids. It does have kind of a Tim Burton feel, yet it's got its own unique flavor. This one has an incredibly epic story and was just, I think, severely underrated when it was released. It is targeted at kind of a unique market, being not really adult animation, but not really for young kids either, which is maybe why it missed the mark. But if you're the least bit interested in some of the visual presentation of this movie, I can tell you the story holds up really well as well. And then You Know Who made it on to my number 8 pick. By the way, if you like this St. Nicholas shirt, you can still pick it up at darrenvandam.com/shop. There's a link in the description, but it's easy enough to find. My next pick being a really slick heist flick he did with Elijah Wood titled The Trust.
What you're saying is we drill down through the floor of the apartment.
That's right.
Okay, you know the drill.
In this movie, they play a couple of Las Vegas cops. When one of them discovers what they believe to be a stash house, they decide to pull off a heist together. Now, heist movies can be one of my favorite genres, but there's a lot of garbage in that genre as well, mainly because they just make so damn many of them. And at first, The Trust can look like just another face in the crowd when it comes to heist movies, but this is a really unique flick. Nicolas Cage is actually doing a fairly interesting character, which helps set this movie off. It's fun to watch him have scenes with Elijah Wood. But as they start pulling off the heist, the tone of the movie changes, and it ends up having a really unique flavor. I actually have seen this one multiple times. I enjoyed it so much. It is kind of a slow burn. You do have to be pretty patient, and you do have to be into Nicolas Cage's kind of strange character that he's doing. But if you dig that stuff, I'm telling you, there is a hell of a payoff in The Trust.
You just reached for my phone?
Yes, I did.
In a suspicious manner?
No, I wasn't, I swear.
That would suggest that you're here under the auspice of illegal activity.
I'll give you $100.
Okay.
Now, dog lovers will want to listen up to this next bit because I'm going to tell you how today's sponsor actually helped extend the life of our dog, Peanut. Sundays for Dogs is air-dried dog food that contains 90% human-grade meat, meaning meat that's safe for you and I to eat. The other 10% is vegetables with no synthetic ingredients. And because Sundays is air-dried, it's actually shelf-stable. It doesn't make the mess that other fresh dog food brands can. You literally just dump it in the bowl. There's no messy cleanup or anything. I know from experience that other fresh dog food brands can be kind of a mess to deal with. They can spoil in the fridge, get a smell, you gotta clean up. Older dogs make a mess with it, and you get none of that with Sundays. You just get clean dog food that's packed with nutrition that you're not getting from ordinary food. And yes, even though it's good for your dog, Sundays can also help you save money. They deliver it straight to your door, so there's no need to go out and buy dog food again. But because it's shelf stable, they don't have to spend extra money on refrigeration, ice packs, or anything like that. They're just focused on this short list of quality ingredients. Sundays can actually cost 40% less than other fresh dog food brands, but for a limited time, my viewers are gonna get an additional 50% off their first order of Sundays. And all you gotta do to get that extra 50% off is use my link. I've put it in the video description, but it's just sundaysfordogs.com/flick. Not only is that a great deal, but you know that you're going to be giving your dog better nutrition than they're getting from regular dog food. So again, to get that discount, use my link in the video description below or just go to sundaysfordogs.com/flick. It's a great deal, but speaking of great stuff, let's talk about the rest of the movies on this list. My number 7 pick is a slow one, but man, is this a beautiful movie. It does have a cult following, but if you love art films, you definitely need to check out Paris, Texas. Released exactly 40 years ago, Paris, Texas feels surprisingly fresh at times. Other times it feels fairly old-fashioned, but you follow a mystery man played by Harry Dean Stanton, easily one of his greatest roles. And the movie opens with him wandering through Texas. And the reason why he's just alone and wandering is the mystery that the movie is trying to solve. Ultimately, this ends up going to a fairly touching place. I don't quite want to call it heartwarming, but it's a really beautiful movie with some stunning cinematography, especially for 1984. That's partly why this movie still feels so fresh and relevant, but this was actually based on a play written by famous actor Sam Shepard, who does have a small role in this movie. This is kind of held up as a cult classic for a really long time now. And again, if you consider yourself a movie buff, really in any kind of fashion, watch this one, but do it at a time when you're in the mood for something with a very slow pace. My number 6 pick is another cult classic. It stars Jackie Chan, and it's one of his more famous movies before he became a star here in America. It's titled Police Story. This is also one of his highest rated movies on IMDb, and he co-directed it. It also features one of his most epic stunts in a movie ever, which is really saying something. He's easily one of the greatest stuntmen of all time, certainly the greatest to also act in his movies as well. Say what you will about Tom Cruise and other people like that, the amount of death-defying stunts Jackie Chan has done in his career, it doesn't even come close to anyone else. So if you're a fan of Jackie Chan, Police Story is required viewing. Another genre that I've always loved is Westerns. I saw a bunch of Westerns as a kid, and I just still love them to this day. But there haven't been many in the 21st century so far. One of the best, though, is Appaloosa.
You ain't got no jurisdiction up here.
Jurisdiction?
I believe he means jurisdiction.
If he doesn't, he's by God right about it.
We've got another actor in the director's chair here. Ed Harris is the star. He also directed this flick. It also stars Viggo Mortensen and Renee Zellweger, and you've got Jeremy Irons doing a really great bad guy like he always does. And this feels kind of like a classic Western. It's got a similar slow pace, but it's filmed with modern cameras and just looks so beautiful and slick. And the story here is not too unique either. A couple of guns are hired to protect a town from some bad guys. Nothing too special there. This just happens to be an exceptional sort of quintessential Western, and easily one of the best, probably in the top 3 created in the 21st century so far. All right, next up we've got a just real deep drama that is just an excellent flick. It's got amazing performances and tells a story that is not only very good, but I think also kind of important for a lot of people to hear. The movie's titled Philomena. Now this actually stars Steve Coogan in a fairly serious role. I love him as a comedy actor. I think he's one of the funniest people alive, but this is a very straightforward role here. There maybe is a couple moments of levity, but this is based on a true story, and he plays a political journalist who picks up the story of a woman's search for her son. The woman's actually played by Judi Dench. They're both amazing in this movie. They've got great chemistry together, and they're really actually fun to watch, even in just long scenes of dialogue. The hook of the story, though, was that she actually plays a woman who was taken away when she was young after she became pregnant and was forced to live in a convent. Her child was then taken from her. And as a journalist, he's trying to help her track down her long-lost son. It's a beautiful story. It can be heartbreaking, but also kind of an important flick. I don't recommend a lot of movies with this sort of tone to them. Philomena just happens to be an exceptional one.
We could watch on television Big Mama's House. It's about a little black man pretending to be a fat black lady. It looked hilarious, Martin.
But if that's not for you, do not worry. My number 3 pick is, in classic Darren Van Dam style, my number 3 pick is a wild one. It's titled Doomsday.
I'll take it. Hold on.
Now this is a mix between Mad Max and Escape from New York. I'll admit here, it's not quite as good as either, but my goodness, if you like either Mad Max or Escape from New York, there's a lot to love with Doomsday. And this is from director Neil Marshall, who did Dog Soldiers and The Descent just before Doomsday. The movie stars Rona Mitra in one of her last big roles. She is smoking hot in this movie as well, but it actually revolves around this giant walled-off area years after like a zombie outbreak where they had to wall off part of Scotland, and some people go back in again years later. So very much like Escape from New York. But this movie came out in 2008, around 20 years after Escape from New York, so it's way more brutal. In fact, this movie is way more brutal than most things released in theaters today. It does go into some weird directions that don't make a ton of sense, but I didn't really mind. The movie overall is just a wild ride. It's a visual feast. It's packed with action, and this movie managed to conjure up some things I'd never seen before or since. Another movie that created things I'd never seen before or since is my next pick, Swiss Army Man. Now, this one has developed a really strong cult following over just a few years, and it's actually from the same directors as Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, it's not as strange as Everything Everywhere All at Once, but it's pretty damn close. Paul Dano plays a man who is stranded on an island, or at least out in the wilderness, and he discovers a corpse washed up on the beach, played by Daniel Radcliffe. And I say played by Daniel Radcliffe because he's not just a corpse in this movie, he's an excessively flatulent corpse that actually helps Paul Dano survive in a bunch of different ways. He's able to utilize this body in bizarre ways, and it ultimately ends up saving his life, but not in the way that you would expect. In fact, it's in a way that your wildest dreams could not comprehend. Now, the point of this movie is a really weird one. It makes a strange point, but it is a riot if you can get into it. I will say though, if weird movies tend to leave you scratching your head, this movie is going to confuse the hell out of you. But if you like being confused and you like really weird stuff, you are going to love Swiss Army Man.
Manny, I think your Wang is guiding us home. It's magic.
And then my number one pick is one I've talked about before, but it's one of my favorite sci-fi action movies released in the past 10 years, Upgrade.
I cannot allow us to be killed. We are going to finish the job we started.
Now, if you've seen the movie, congratulations. If you have not, and you love the movies I recommend here on the channel, do yourself a favor, make it the first thing you watch before they remove it from Max. This was actually written and directed by Leigh Whannell, who is kind of the creator of the Saw franchise. But even if you don't like Saw, I'm telling you, Upgrade has some amazing ideas in it that are brought to life in a fantastic way. Logan Marshall Green stars in this, and it is an amazing performance that's unlike anything you've ever seen before. He actually becomes a paraplegic fairly early on in the movie, and is given the gift of this new technology, this new chip that will allow him to walk. The rub is that this chip can actually control his body with his permission.
I need your permission to operate independently.
Permission granted!
Thank you.
It makes for some amazing sequences, like this fight scene where Logan Marshall Green is having to act with his face one way and then act with his body a different way. Not only is it kind of funny and entertaining, but it makes for some amazing action and some incredibly clever moments all throughout this movie. I hope we get a sequel to this, but even if we don't, this movie holds up as such a gem of sci-fi action. I'll go ahead and warn you, it's got some brutal moments in it, but overall the movie's fairly accessible. But that is the list. Don't forget to go check out the Sundays link in the video description to get some better food for your dog. But I will keep making these episodes as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Max episode, and you will see me on the next one.